Domnule ambasador, se împlinește un an de la izbucnirea războiului din Ucraina. Cum s-a schimbat lumea în această perioadă?
I think the world has changed in many different ways, depending on where you sit within it. I think there are some things that have changed for everybody. If we think about the inflation problem that has been visited upon us, the use of blackmail of energy and of food supplies, of the disappearance of fertilizers from our agricultural production. Those are changes that affect everybody in the world. I think for many people they are very alarmed at the increase in insecurity from Russia's actions and from tearing up of the international rule book. But I think people are also very determined that that international rule book that we learnt about from very difficult lessons in the 20th century, I think people are even more attached to that than they were in the past. So I think the international community has a self-confidence about it, despite the difficulties that have been created.
S-au schimbat și relațiile între anumite țări, între anumite regiuni?
Well, I think the relationship with Russia has changed for everybody. And we can now see that we had warnings at earlier stages that Putin's Russia had intentions beyond its borders, which frankly none of us would have believed. I mean, what we're witnessing a year on is a frankly incredible way for a major country, a permanent member of the Security Council, to behave in the 21st century. So the relationships have suffered greatly. I think we've seen a degree of solidarity in the world. Look at the votes in the United Nations, for example, where Russia has experienced a degree of isolation that I don't think they expected. I think they thought they would have an easier ride. And many countries have drawn closer together as they realise that it's only in that solidarity and determination that our important values and our peaceful coexistence can be reassured.
Ce a învățat lumea din acest război?
I think we've probably learnt that we have to defend ourselves more, or to be prepared to defend ourselves more. We don't have the certainties, or at least we don't have the quality of partnership that we had with the Soviet Union. I mean, remember the Soviet Union negotiated with us many arms control and disarmament treaties, and even the Conventional Forces Treaty with the Soviet Union. All that has been ripped up by Russia. So I think we will have to restart that work to recreate the confidence when it comes to having a Russia that is prepared to withdraw from Ukraine, and when we can get on to establish a new peace.
Președintele Zelensky a fost la Londra. Iată, președintele Biden a mers la Kiev. Ce mesaje transmit liderii lumii în felul acesta cu astfel de vizite?
I think it's a demonstration to the people of Ukraine that they are not alone. And they have provided heroic resistance since the 24th of February last year. And I'm sure that visits by President Biden or by our own Prime Minister, both Prime Ministers of the last year, has given a message to the Ukrainians that we're really with you. And when that is combined with the assistance that's being provided by the United States and by the United Kingdom and many other countries, I think that's really important. But it's also important to our own populations that they see that their governments are taking concrete actions to safeguard our peace that we rely on so much.
Marea Britanie a fost una dintre țările care a sărit cel mai repede în ajutorul Ucrainei. Haideți să explicăm puțin de ce o asemenea atitudine, ce a determinat pe Marea Britanie să acționeze în felul acesta.
Well, I think if you asked that question of foreign diplomats, they would say that the United Kingdom has always been a very sensitive player and a very active player in foreign and security policy. And it's one of the things that we hear from people, that they miss our councils within the European Union, for example, because we take that sort of thing extremely seriously. And we have responsibilities as a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council ourselves to act for world peace and for stability. But of course there is a more negative side to it as well, and that is that we have suffered in the UK from actions of the Russian state. The assassination of Litvinenko, and then the Salisbury attacks with nerve agents, which led to the death of a British citizen. The Russians being targeted by the Russian state fortunately survived. So we know something of the determination of this present Russian government to carry out attacks, and therefore we, perhaps more than others, were sensitized to understand what we were seeing. And we had information before the 24th of February, as you will remember, that we shared with the world, saying he is going to invade. It's just not just rhetoric, it's real. So we were prepared. Some other countries didn't understand that warning. Romania did, and I think those are basically the reasons why we reacted early. And it matters seriously to British citizens that peace is re-established in Europe.
Care este ajutorul pe care îl acordă Marea Britanie în acest moment Ucrainei și dacă va urma ceva, aveți date concrete?
Well, we've spent last year, in 2022, we spent £2.3 billion, so something over 11 or 12 billion lei, on military assistance of all types. And I think something like £1.5 billion on humanitarian and economic aid. And in 2023, Prime Minister Sunak has made clear that we will at least match in military assistance what we provided in 2022, or raise it. And you've seen that we were the first nation to donate modern tanks in the form of Challenger 2s to Ukraine earlier on this year. So our intention is to accelerate the support from all countries to Ukraine, because we need this war over quickly. The people of Ukraine need it over quickly, but over in terms of Russia not hanging on to territory that they have invaded, because that would be a disastrous sign to everybody.
După vizita președintelui Zelensky în Marea Britanie, Rusia a transmis avertismente autorităților britanice în cazul în care Marea Britanie va trimite și mai multe ajutoare militare. Cum priviți astfel de avertismente din partea Rusiei?
Well, we have to take it seriously, but we also know that what the leader of Russia has been doing all along is to use our own media, our own social media, and people's own fears against us. They're very keen to use disinformation and threats because they can influence what democratic governments are hearing from their own people. So although he won't listen to his own people in Russia, he says things and does things which will have an impact on the population of Romania or the United Kingdom or elsewhere. So I think it's in that framework that I would understand it most. But of course, your country, my country, our governments and our people are not entirely surprised at what we're dealing with, and we are wise to these techniques and will not be influenced by his psychological operations.
Consideră Marea Britanie că în acest moment e nevoie de o întărire a flancului estic al NATO? Va participa armata britanică în vreun fel?
That reinforcement of the eastern flank is happening. Of course, it was decided at the Madrid summit last year. The Vilnius summit will take that forward and really implement it. As far as the United Kingdom is concerned, I don't really want to go into the details of it because the military reinforcements that we are deploying to Romania bring with them important capabilities. So we don't have large numbers of troops based here permanently, but the number of troops who are exercising with their Romanian allies and who are visiting for specific purposes is quite significant.
Se așteaptă o mare ofensivă a Rusiei în Ucraina. Cum poate fi ajutată Ucraina să reziste? Președintele Zelensky cere din ce în ce mai multe arme, avioane, de exemplu. Marea Britanie intenționează să ofere avioane F-16.
The question of what sort of whether we will be offering very complex jets is one that's being considered after President Zelensky's visit. We are looking to provide everything that we can in terms of complex capability and basic requirements of ammunition and anti-drone weaponry, for example, that can really play a role in Ukraine's defence of its own country. The most important thing is that all of us, from everybody freedom-loving, actually gets those arms into Ukraine as quickly as possible, because we don't want this war to drag on. We know that Russia would be very happy to have it drag on for year and year and year, but actually we need it over, but on terms where Russia withdraws from all of the territory that it has sought to occupy.
Cum vedeți informațiile privind intențiile Rusiei de a destabiliza Republica Moldova?
Well, again, they would say that, wouldn't they? It's another version of messing with the insides of our heads. We know that President Sandu has a complex country where there are differences of views within the population, but she has done a first-class job in leading the country despite the noises that are coming from Russia. We've even seen Russian-speaking Moldovans reacting about the threats being made to their country. And we've seen people leaving Transnistria who feared that they would be caught up in the building up of Russian forces that Putin said would never happen. So we have to take it seriously. We have to be ready for those sorts of activities, and we've seen false flagging incidents taking place in Moldova, a provocation of the circumstances there. But we should not. We shouldn't react with our emotions. We need to react with our concrete plans. If he tries to do that, this is how we would respond.
Și după un an de război, ce scenariu credeți că ar fi cel mai posibil pentru terminarea acestui război? Se vorbește despre finalizarea lui la masa negocierilor, în plan militar.
I think we're fairly clear that it has to be a diplomatic solution. I think we also know that Putin is going to be quite reluctant to talk about peace until he realizes that there is no further way forward for his military campaign. I mean, the sorts of losses, I gather over 180,000 Russian troops have either been killed or injured in less than a year. The material losses that he is making and the reputational losses that he is making, I mean, frankly, who knows how that is being metabolized in the Kremlin and by the Russian people. But if you remember, the Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan was as much provoked by popular antipathy to the body bags returning from Afghanistan as anything else. That's all quite difficult to predict from the outside, but the certainty amongst Ukraine and its friends is that there has to be that withdrawal. There has to be a return to Ukraine within its own borders and with its own sovereignty. That's the only precondition for being able to have diplomatic exchanges.
Domnul ambasador, vă mulțumesc.
Thank you very much indeed.